Welcome to Real History Facts. In today's documentary, we ask a profound and disturbing question. Why did Adolf Hitler hate the Jews? From the trenches of the First World War, to the hallways of power in Nazi Germany, from long-standing European anti-Semitic traditions to radical racial ideology, we trace the roots of Hitler's hatred, how it grew, how it was harnessed, and how it resulted in catastrophe. If you're new here, please hit subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss future deep dives into real history. And if you find this film informative, please give it a thumbs up. Your support helps us bring more history to you. Now let's begin. To understand Hitler's hatred, we must first understand a much older phenomenon, anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, prejudice, hostility or hatred directed at Jews because they are Jewish, had deep roots in European history. In many European societies, Jews had been stereotyped, excluded, blamed for economic ills, religiously marginalized. According to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, the roots of anti-Semitism date back thousands of years. In Germany and Austria, especially in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, nationalist movements, racial theories, and social turmoil combined to make anti-Semitism more than a religious prejudice. It became a pseudo-scientific racial hatred. The rise of nationalist racial state ideology created fertile ground. So Hitler's anti-Semitism did not arise in a vacuum. He drew on existing currents of hatred, scapegoating, conspiracy theories, and racial pseudoscience. Let's look at Hitler's own personal background and how he came to embrace anti-Semitism. Hitler was born in 1889 in Austria-Hungary, and he spent years in Vienna, 1907-1913, where anti-Semitic ideas were widely present in civic culture and politics. While in Vienna he encountered various ideologies: German nationalism, pan-Germanism, anti-Marxism, and anti-Semitism. Over time he adopted the view that Jewish people were part of a destructive force in European society. Hitler then served in the German army during the First World War. Germany's defeat and the collapse of the imperial system shocked many Germans. The stab-in-the-back myth, which blamed Jews, socialists, communists for Germany's defeat, gained currency. Hitler and others embraced this narrative. Thus Hitler's personal transformation from frustrated artist-soldier to political extremist was intertwined with socio-political upheaval and long-standing anti-Semitic ideas. Hitler's hatred of Jews was not simply personal prejudice, it was built into the ideological framework of the Nazi movement. First, racial anti-Semitism. Hitler and the Nazi movement defined Jews not just as a religious group but as a race, one that was inferior, alien, dangerous. The idea of a Jewish race that threatened the German Aryan race was central. Second, conspiracy and scapegoating. Hitler blamed the Jews for Germany's problems: the loss in World War I, the economic crash of 1929, communism, liberal democracy, and declining national strength. According to the Anne Frank House, Hitler wrote that the influence of the Jews would never disappear without removing its cause, the Jew, from our midst. Third, social Darwinism and struggle. Hitler viewed history as an eternal struggle among races. The German Aryan people had to be purified, strengthened, and free from what he saw as harmful alien influences, among them Jews. These elements combined, Jews represented both a racial threat and a political, ideological threat in Hitler's worldview. He argued that the Jews were behind both capitalism, financial power, and communism, revolution, contradictory, but coherent within his conspiratorial mindset. It's also worth noting, Hitler's main ideological statements, for example in his book, Mein Kampf, lay out these themes. Hate alone does not win elections. Hitler and the Nazi Party were shrewd in exploiting circumstances. Moreover, Nazi propaganda harnessed these sentiments, portraying Jews as the cause of Germany's decline, the internal enemy, the people who betrayed Germany in 1918. Nazi indoctrination also built on pre-existing anti-Semitic currents in German society. A study found that areas with higher pre-1914 anti-Jewish voting were more receptive to Nazi anti-Semitic propaganda. In short, Hitler's anti-Semitism was timely and politically useful. It provided a unifying enemy, a target for frustration, and a way to mobilize nationalistic fervor. Once Hitler and the Nazi Party came to power in 1933, anti-Semitic ideology translated into policies and actions. Jews were stripped of civil rights, excluded from professions, had businesses boycotted, forced into ghettos, required to wear identifying markers, had property confiscated. Jews were stripped of civil rights, excluded from professions, had businesses boycotted, forced into ghettos, required to wear identifying markers, had property confiscated. At the same time, Nazi propaganda consistently blamed Jews for Germany's problems, reinforcing the notion of Jews as a threat. Hitler's infamous proclamation on 30 January 1939, often called Hitler's prophecy, foreshadowed the extermination of the Jews. Historians trace how Hitler's racism became genocide. For example, in the chapter of the Cambridge History of the Holocaust titled Hitler and the Nazi Party, the case is made for the emergence in the 1920s of a vision that was already at least implicitly genocidal. Historians trace how Hitler's racism became genocide. For example, in the chapter of the Cambridge History of the Holocaust, titled Hitler and the Nazi Party, the case is made for the emergence in the 1920s of a vision that was already at least implicitly genocidal. In essence, the ideology, the social terrain, the political opportunity, coalesced into murderous action. You might ask, why Jews? Why singled out? Several interrelated reasons: scapegoat for national trauma, Germany's defeat in WWI, economic collapse, national humiliation. Hitler framed Jews as betrayers, weak links, internal enemies. Racial theory. Jews were cast as antithetical to the Aryan ideal, racially different, biologically inferior, culturally destructive. Hitler's racial worldview required a target. Conspiratorial mythos and Senderfein. Jews were blamed for both capitalism and communism. Hitler claimed they manipulated finance, media, politics, and war. These myths were older, but Hitler exploited them. Political utility. Attacking the Jews unified disparate right-wing groups, diverted attention from failures, mobilized supporters. It's important to emphasize, Hitler did not merely inherit anti-Semitic ideas, he shaped them, amplified them, gave them agency. Scholars debate how much Hitler planned the genocide from the very start, or whether it evolved, but in his speeches and writings, he articulated an extreme anti-Semitism. For example, historians cite his framing of Jews as an enemy race. In the Cambridge History chapter noted earlier, it is argued that Hitler's vision in the 1920s was already genocidal in intent. Thus, the personal factor, Hitler's worldview, his strategic use of anti-Semitism, his leadership of the Nazi Party, all central to why Jews became the principal target of Nazi violence. What does this historic inquiry teach us? First, that hatred and prejudice do not appear overnight. They build on older traditions, get reframed in new ideologies, exploited by opportunists. Second, that in times of crisis, economic collapse, defeat, social chaos, scapegoating becomes attractive, ideology becomes dangerous. Third, that anti-Semitism in Nazi Germany was both ideological and structural. It became mass murder. The lessons remain vital. The Holocaust stands as a warning of what unchecked hatred, dehumanization, and state power can produce. Fourth, this history is not just about the past. Anti-Semitism remains a live issue in many parts of the world. Knowledge, education, and vigilance matter. Thank you for watching this documentary on real history facts. If you found this video informative and thought-provoking, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the past. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you'll be alerted when our next investigation is published. Also, if you have thoughts or questions about this topic, perhaps aspects you'd like us to explore in future videos, please leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, history matters. The past speaks to us, warns us, teaches us. Let's never forget. Until next time, is Real History Facts.